the inline technique is faster than the embedded technique? Do you have an idea for that, right? I hope everyone knows about this point. That is faster, right? That's you know about it. And what do you think the advantage of maintaining a separate script and function? What is the advantage of maintaining a separate script and function? Obviously, anyone knows about it, knows that easy extendable, reusability, extensibility, right? These all facilities are provided by this embedded technique. So that is the reason it depends on our requirement. If I want reusability across, then I will use embedded technique. If I want only one-time functionality, no extensions and reusability required much, then I can go with this inline technique. So the point here is, so you can simply say that this is like MVC and this is like MVVM. I hope many of you are clear now. That means everything is in the view, that is MVVM, and model view model. And here everything is in the controller. Logic is in the controller. The interactions are managed from the UI. Angular can handle both of them. Angular can handle both of them. So that is the difference between MVC and MVVM frameworks. Usually you have to know about that. Okay. I hope everyone is clear about this. How to use these frameworks in our application, we will see. Now, important is how data binding works in our Angular application using these frameworks. How data binding works by using these frameworks. So what is the second architecture is MVVM. That is model view and view model view model. So in that model is same, so model is same and view also same, and view model actually it comprises of logic at UI. It comprises of logic at UI, that is the view model. So logic at UI. And rest of the points you know. I will give you a diagram of that particular architecture in our notes. I will post you that you can go through it. But these are general frameworks people have to know while working with Angular, that these are both used. And how to work with them, we will see now. We will discuss and see practically how we can handle that. Right now, important is in data binding techniques, actually data binding. So Angular, Angular, Angular data binding supports Angular data binding supports one-way binding, and it supports two-way binding. Actually, when we started using frameworks in the early days, that means I don't know from how many years you are in web development, but actually when first we started single page applications, we started with a technology called Knockout.js. Single page application means Knockout.js. We started with Knockout.js, that is the first available framework for building single page applications, and we even trained developers across companies on single page applications, especially on Knockout.js. We thought that Knockout.js will make a good trend in the market, but suddenly others came into picture and they took over. And do you know one of the main reason of Angular taking over the other frameworks is Angular JS actually when it came. One of the main abilities, it supports two-way binding. It supports two-way binding. And that is the main reason majority of developers started migrating towards Angular, that okay, this is good, better than others. So many other features are there. One of the point is many frameworks which were there in the market already, they don't support two-way binding techniques. Due to this, developers are very concerned about various implementations in two-way binding. That means the point is, in other locations also we can use two-way binding, but other frameworks also we can use two-way binding, but it is not implicit. We have to manually implement. Explicitly we need to configure and define. But AngularJS came with this as an inbuilt feature that it supports two-way binding techniques. Due to this, developers showed more interest on AngularJS rather than other frameworks, because it has good framework support, and it is according to how they are expecting. That's the reason. So what is this one way two way binding? I will tell you the point. We will see about that. This is two way binding is one of the key feature of AngularJS and Angular, right? AngularJS and Angular supports both binding techniques, one way binding and two way binding. Actually, one way binding is nothing but, usually in one way binding, what happens is, one way binding is just like a read only technique. That means it will read the data from the model and bind to the view. It reads the data from the model and binds to the view. That is simple one way binding technique. That means what happens is, we have a template, and we have model. So we have model, and this data is merged to the view. That means this data is sent to the view. This data is sent to the view. That is one time merging. That means it will simply merge to the view. After merging to the view, the point is, it is no longer connected with it. That means model is no longer connected with it. This is like read only. It is no longer connected to it. Due to that, what happens is, if any change in the view, it is not going to update into the model. Any change in the view, it is not going to update in the model. Due to that, what we have to do is, we need to collect the changes, identify the changes by using a separate controller logic. By using a separate controller logic, we have to identify the changes. Then those changes need to be updated to the model. This we have to do explicitly. Implicitly, it will not support. This is one way binding. That means you get it and you bind it, and that is finished. That means it's no longer connected with it. Now, if any change occurred, it will not revert back and update into the model. That is what actually one-way binding technique. Now, Angular supports two-way binding technique. In the two-way binding technique, actually what happens is, so we have a template. We have a template and we have a view. We have a template and we have a view. Template comprises of view related presentation and everything. And we have model. And in two-way binding technique, actually in software architecture terms, we call model as a single source of truth. We call model as single source of truth. It is a general architecture terminology, actually, single source of truth. In architectural technology, single source of truth means model is single source of truth. That means it contains the information. So before the change and after the change, it tracks everything. That means how it was before changing and after changing, what it is. Every information, it contains all the metadata. That means it contains all the information about the data changes.